What's up, guys? I'm Jeremy with Rock Krawler. We're here with some OGs of the industry and some newcomers to the rock crawling world in the suspension game.
I'm Tony Pellegrino, president and founder of Genright Offroad.
I'm Jeff Perkins. I work with Genright Offroad.
John Wulf, owner of Wulf Offroad and Squirrelbound Offroad.
Okay, so before you got here, what we were talking about was people watching videos like on YouTube and deciding for themselves what they really want out of a suspension. Are they a crawler? Are they more of a go fast guy? Are they a no maintenance guy? Like, where do they fit, right? And how to choose that?
Right, and you know what you want to do. They got to know what they want out of their vehicle. But if you're going to be judging from the YouTubers, you can actually learn a lot from just watching their vehicles perform with what they're doing, or not, how they're transitioning, and whether it's be bad suspension geometry, because the whole buzz on the internet is all suspension geometry, best numbers. Well, no offense, there's no race car built with perfect numbers. There's no vehicle built. We all make compromises. So
there's no perfect number.
No, there is no perfect number. It's all about tuning it with the springs and shocks after you've made the best compromises for you. He's a hardcore guy, rock crawling in AZ. You guys have a vast experience. I mean, we were talking earlier about, hey, when we brought the independent 3-link and triangulated 4-link out for the TJ in 01, people were like, that's never going to work.
Right.
And now it's really mainstream, and most people believe. There's still a lot that don't trust me. And we get a lot of calls, well, what happens if it doesn't really happen if you torque your jam nuts, but here's a 4-link option for you that we have a no maintenance option. But and you guys back in the early days were doing your bracket kits for TJ, LJ, where you built your arms, and you could probably talk about that a heck of a lot more than I can, because we knew each other when we were first meeting back when Poison Spider was Clifton and went downhill, and Genright was coming up to fame, and what you guys were all about. And obviously we cross a lot of paths because we enjoy the same things. The Ultra 4, the ultimate in Swiss Army knives of Jeeps is per se. We do focus, I feel we probably focus a lot more on the street crowd than what you guys do. He's focused on extremely low center of gravity, but still getting a 16-inch travel coil over in there. There's a lot to learn by simply watching these people, and they might be like, hey, hashtag this brand, hashtag that brand, what they like. But when you watch your vehicles and when you watch it transition, you can see what it's all about. Whether they say it's the best geometry, perfect geometry, there is no such thing. Every company, you talk to Bender over at Motorbill, he's very honest, we're very honest. Here's the compromises we made, and here's how we overcame it to be what it is. You guys take out more cross members, you're taking out a ton of cross members. We're not as invasive, but, we all try to achieve the best of what we're trying to do. And these people need to learn how to go determine that for themselves. And honestly, being truthful with themselves about what they're gonna go do with their vehicle is part of it, and what their maintenance skill set is. When you guys came out with, what did you call it? The Elite Kit for the JK?
Yeah.
With the flat belly and the body lift. I mean, you guys spent a lot of time tuning it. We share a lot of geometry in the front and the 3-link stuff, and you guys were double triangulating in the rear. We do double triangulation a little bit less because I want it to be a little more go fast, a little less rocks, but a little more stable on the street. All those things actually mean something to people at the end of the day, and it's not just, honestly,
I don't know if you understand it though, right? There's
Right.
always variations.
Well, that's where a lot of people go wrong. They should be watching a lot of the old school videos about suspension geometry opposed to their favorite YouTube influencer.
Yeah.
Right.
It's basically a monster truck driver, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of.
Well, you need to go back to how did the YouTuber pick the suspension?
Right.
It was thrown down.
And there's a lot of that.
Probably, but I mean, he's obviously in a very different environment. You can cut up through the tub in your area. You can cut up into the tub in your area. In our area, or the northern half of the U.S., If I cut through the tub, I just created the biggest rust hole I've ever created in my vehicle.
Yeah.
So we focus on keeping the cabin sealed, keeping a Jeep, but being the best that we can make it be for what we're targeting. And I know you guys, you've been building your JT buddy kit and testing it for what, 12 months now?
It's been a year. Last year it was the first time.
And you guys spent a shitload of time testing your JK kit, which obviously helps you speed up the JL because it's not crazy different, especially the way you guys did it.
Right.
For us, there was a lot more learning curve because of how we were attaching brackets to the frame, making sure they don't rip off. And the first thing we did was run them at KOH with no cross members in it. I was like, let's see if it fits. See if our weld scheduling is what this frame needs, and we've lucked out. But how do we get these people to understand what we're all doing and what they should be looking for is the whole question of, whether it be a TJ, LJ, YJs, JKs, JLs, or JTs, how do we make them understand what is really going on? Because if you're only focused on perfect numbers, well, like you said, perfect numbers don't exist.
Well, certainly not under a body of a Jeep.
Right.
Even when you build a buggy, you're still making concessions.
You have to make
That's-
changes.
Yeah.
You still have to package it.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Packaging is the number one thing for compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you put your link mats? Do you really focus on, let's say, for example, your guys with your triangulation or your independent 3-inch, you guys are slightly running triangulation on the lowers. Well, even ChatGPT knows you shouldn't do it, but you're making constant, because it gives you jacking and some other things, but it does help you in the rocks if that's your focus. And our focus is obviously more vehicle dynamic side, especially where we're going as a business, going more towards an OE level type suspension, where our front lowers have to go straight forward. We have to play by the rules because we can't create jacking, we can't create things that give ADAS issues and other issues for people because we are promoting a suspension that can go on the street, in the dirt, in the rocks. And you guys have, a little bit more hardcore side where it's a lot more of this Ultra 4 and having fun. And you are straight up rocks. You rock head, you got rocks on the brain, and that's it.
No, it is. I learned a little bit out here. I mean, don't get me wrong, we run the dudes sometimes, and we're like, shit, we wish we would change this up because I think I actually saw you put something out a little while back, and you are 100% right on it, which is, don't rely on the rubber bands on the lower or the coilovers to be your bump stops. In Arizona, for what we were running, that's not a big deal to go off of that. Now, that changes when you want to go to places like out here, anywhere else, and you think you're gonna go through the dunes, and you think you're gonna do that. 100% right with what you said right there.
Because
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't do that. It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
So I've had my learning experiences with, what I love, but I'm not gonna have that great ride going across and doing all that. I won't have it. I've had that conversation with you to where I was, hey, I'm not the guy to build something where some guy thinks he's gonna go mob that thing. Because I told you they used to worry me because I was like, a guy tells me yeah, and then goes out there and tries to do it, and he doesn't have it. Next thing I know, he's basically screwing me over, even though he was yeah, and that was always a worry of mine.
So we've seen plenty of that out here already. People just
tossing
it.
So that's always been a worry to me as a builder on the way that I build those because you only need that one person that's like, no, we never talked about that, or we never did this, or we never said any of this, and next thing you know, you're like, wait a second, man. So in those style builds, it does become tricky because the terrains are different. You're not always going to stay in Arizona.
Like Hammersville, very different than here. This is soft, fluffy sand, dune sand.
Yeah.
You get the Hammers, it's all hard pack. Your GL turf's twice as hard. Even their driving style, their powertrain, everything has to be tuned to that terrain and what they want to do. Because if you know how to drive, you're going through the whoops and you're going to be on and off the gas, picking the nose up or settle in the rear. But if they drive differently, then That's a completely different suspension too, regardless of link geometry.
Yes.
That driving style, okay, I just went from a 3.6 JL to a 392 JL to a Demon JL. Those things are all very different out here, and understanding what they are, what their builds are. You guys have a lot of LS equipped LJs out here. We've got a lot of straight 6 LJs out here, which have 36 horsepower on a good day now. I think Gerald's is up to 40 because we might have fixed a few vacuum leaks this week. So you don't have to, he's doing his best. And honestly, that little thing works great in the rocks. It struggles up the sand, but that's not what he's here for. He's not here to go mobbing the dunes. If we want to do that, as Jeep guys, even slightly Bronco guys, we had Keisha and Joey on the trails rotating their Bronco. We're tuning for full-bodied rigs to just have a good time in all situations. He's tuning full-bodied rigs for just the rocks. But, how to get people to understand themselves is super important. What they want out of their vehicle, what they're going to do with it, and judging for themselves, And we all have to be honest. It says there's compromises we made. Bender, again, I respect Bender a lot, and he'll tell you too. He's like, listen, I'll tell you why I did it. And if it's not for you, same with us, same with you guys. But the level of tuning and time that we put into each chassis, like we had JT Euphoria out here last year. It's getting released now. Spend 12, 14, 16 months of seat time, get it in a couple different powertrains, and try to come up with that average compromise across. You guys got a lot of big power vehicles out here. We've got some, couple Demon JTs and some other, things out here. And when I saw like this one dude, I don't know what the hell it is, 1,000 horsepower on a JT.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we need to change the valving a little bit different in the rear because that thing is a freaking animal.
Yeah.
So knowing the vehicles, knowing the consumers, what vehicle they don't want, where they want to be. Southeast is different than here. You've been to the Warren thing. You guys have been to Wind Rock.
Yeah.
You go to Texas. That's very different. That's more technical, very slow, kind of like Arizona. Or if you're just going to the hammers to wreck wheel and the hammer trails. But you and I want to go to get to the trail at 90 miles an hour across the lake. But we don't want to be 40 and having to see the chiropractor after that.
Yeah.
So you guys have helped evolve suspension a tremendous amount. From what you guys have done, especially when you started putting 3.0s in. I think you guys were the first guys putting big shocks in to control. We started doing our own coilovers, bypasses, and which creates a whole different learning curve by itself because, no offense to Fox, they're a great company, King, their shocks rust. We can't run that stuff where we are. Those things won't last a
I
year.
remember you saying
Yeah, I was
that.
like, I love Glenn from Radford, fucking fantastic guy. But we have to stay away from rust and corrosion on shocks or else they're shot. They're 12 months. I just spent $1,200 on a shock that's going to become, but the consumer needs to know this before they make their educated decision.
That's right.
And it's not just,
Then they're out the money.
exactly, shit, I got to start over.
Yeah.
Even us, we changed the 17.4 pH hard chrome shafts last year, I think, because some of the nitride stuff, we saw some issues with it and surface finish and stuff like that. And we wanted to make something that would never rust. I was like, I don't want a speck of rust on any part of this thing because I don't know how to take it apart because we're so busy to put time. Sorry, Justin, I'd give you more work to do.
I don't want
He doesn't. I know you don't want it. You know what Easter Jeep Party looks like. You're welcome.
security.
Exactly. When it came back, he's like, I just want to. We had a 3-year plan. What are we? 5 years on that 3-year plan?
Yeah, but it's still a plan, right?
Oh, it's still a plan.
There you go.
It's an evolving 3-year
It's
plan.
a theory right now.
So it keeps us busy, but keeps us engaged in the community, just like you guys are with what you're doing with your JLs. And I know you're trying to bounce out of not bounce, but add a little more wider portfolio where you're going to start not just doing chassis for JLs.
Yeah.
You're going to start screwing with it kind of like we did. We talked about certain things that would allow you to apply the brackets to the frame and do it the way that would not be inhibited to the frames.
Yeah, you actually turned me on to that. Choosing a different welding wire and size and how you do it.
Scheduling, how you keep parent metal, how you keep things appropriate for what you're working with.
Yeah.
I think what helped us the most on that is that we were doing it to unibodies way back in the day. So, the proper stitching, don't laugh. You're like, I'm not touching it.
That's exactly what
Yeah.
No frame, no change.
He doesn't even like TJs or LJs. I'll be honest with you, he's like, they're rust piles. His wife over there will attest to that. But, it's been a constant evolution, but you see people popping up now that are like, this is the best geometry. I'm like, is it the best suspension? Where are you picking your numbers from?
Right.
Just because people are on the internet telling you, there is so much more.
Well, if somebody's saying the best, what is that? That they've got on a ramp and flex it out? Well, if that thing flexes out, well, it's probably a pile of crap going down the road.
Right. What is it on the road? What is it at speed in the dirt? What is it? What is it in what is best for the customer? The individual who's choosing the suspensions is really what it comes down to. We've all said it. We've all made compromises. You try to combat those compromises as best as possible through for us, obviously, we do coils and shocks and we do coilovers and we do all that stuff. You guys focus primarily on coilover builds.
Yeah.
He's all coilover builds and some Ori struts. So it's, there is so much more to it. Once you put those brackets in, you put your link geometry in, that's a cool place to start. But I can put brackets on a, axle that give you, to some people, what they're looking for numbers wise, that will give that axle zero control. But yet, I'll run it through a calculator, it's going to tell you that's the best, according to some people. But it's actually the worst for controlling your axle.
Right.
And controlling the dynamics.
Because are too close together.
Yeah, they're either too close together, or everything's above the center line of the axle tube. You don't have positive pinion control. There's certain things that you just cannot compromise against because you're making a mechanical compromise and a real hard failure, and not just something that may handle like shit or just might not perform the way you want it to perform. So, and there's tons of geometry out there. There's, obviously, we can just name some if we want. We get your motor builds, your RPMs, yours, ours, what he's doing, they all vary. There is no one best. You have to put the best package together you can overall and understand if you're cutting up through the tub, and you're in the Northeast, they have to know that and what that's going to do to the vehicle long term with us. But there's obviously certain benefits to that.
And maybe the guy, it's his toy. It doesn't matter.
Right, it doesn't matter. It's going to sit in the garage anyway. He's not going
driver. That's different.
Right, he's not going snow wheeling. Okay, what engine's in it? You're going to run into problems with exhaust routing. Shit. I don't know how you do the LS swaps and the TJLJ right now because that flat belly exhaust routing, I'm like, this shit's coming out through the hood right now. Because I don't know how I'm going to do it. Yeah.
But that's also why events like Trail Hero are still so awesome. Like if I was planning a Jeep build, I would come out here without touching the Jeep, hop in with every group, pick three companies or so that you're interested in, hop in with every group, see how it performs, see what you like doing the best, and then make a decision from there.
Right.
Yeah, even from the vendor show, I'm giving rides to show people okay, now take your Jeep and go try
and you're not just taking keyboard warriors, fanboys' opinions. You're saying everything you
Which
want.
is starting to become quite a bit of a problem.
Yeah, it really is.
By far. Especially when people get into triangulated and all that.
Oh yeah.
You're cutting up everything you got. So if you're not good at I used to be a Mr. Fix-It for a minute. We stopped. We won't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Because liability alone.
Right.
I mean, you can't just start chopping frames back up and start moving
fixing
this and moving that. It's more of a, sorry man, sell it.
Right.
And I've had a lot of people say, Tony, I was on your website and these brackets look the same over on XYZ company, but what they're missing is they're made out of 1/8" material, and ours are 1/4" material.
Right.
They can't see all these details.
Or they're backplated.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Or how they're actually grabbing the frame.
That's
You
right.
know, are you just grabbing the center of the frame and doing a full perimeter burn and it's weak and you're just going to rip it off?
Right.
You know, are you grabbing the top and coming around the corners where there's structure and doing a proper weld schedule around the bracket to make it keep parent metal and base metal happy?
Remember your clothes are
My alarm's Yeah. Hey, that thing's gonna go off like 100 times.
We're multitasking.
But you know, I mean, the suspension game's evolved since you and I've been around. You know, like I said, from what we did, you saw what we did. We started to become friends then. We saw what you were doing. Then obviously you did the tracer kits, which was an evolution on what you originally started with, and you know, got into the JKs, and you guys did a fantastic job with the JK kit. You know, and now he's bouncing into gladiators and a little bit of JLs, but his is, he wants 16-inch travel coilovers. Doesn't care how much shit he's got to move to get in there. Wants all that travel, but at but at the end of the day, 16-inch travel coilovers is not going to stop you from hanging tight. If you are in situations, you're always hanging tight.
Well, look, anything you build, if it's more and more capable, you're gonna try crazier stuff.
Yeah.
You're gonna get to a spot where you're hanging tired, but the stakes are much, much higher.
Right.
Well, even down with the 16s, because I had to play the right level of my front drive track's only going to handle so much.
Right.
So much. You're steering.
You can't just produce it and say, yeah, great, I got that much more downtrend. Well, yet the guy keeps blowing the car going and ripping the thing out the side. Worse on the JLs, because now it's taking everything out that they're packing on the side of the trans now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another reason I haven't put much of anything out, is to know like where can I even really be with this thing.
And that in general is what stops us for coilover heights is, where's my next mechanical limit? I don't want to stress those components, because when you stress those components, that's going to stop you faster than hanging a tire.
That's right.
You know.
Or you're considering it with your kids and going, well, I don't want to make this guy have to buy all these things. Right? Where I tell people, you're buying all that stuff, period.
Right.
If you want to go to this level, there's no choice. You gotta buy it all.
And we get that a lot with the gladiators, because the gladiator was a different animal. All across the board, it was a different animal. And we stopped at 3 inches and didn't do our normal 2.5, 3.5, 4.5. And they're like, why'd you stop at 3? I'm like, well, you don't need a carrier bearing drop. You don't need a front drive shaft. You're not opening up another level of Pandora's box that you have to throw at your vehicle. And then once we crossed it, we're like, okay, well, you know, a 3 inch with your fenders or anything, you're on 40s anyway. Once you cross that, we're going to 4.5 and 42s, or maybe 43s, and your vehicle now you need the rest of Pandora's box to go with it. So your checkbook just got a lot lighter.
Yeah,
you have to
even to support that tire.
Right,
you know?
right. You should be getting axles.
Yeah,
everything. You should be getting everything. Really, if you're going to use, if it's a street guy, to be honest with you, I've been impressed with the JL and the JT unit bearings. They've actually held up pretty well.
Somehow.
It's wild. Like,
yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, like Dan from Next Venture, he was out with us on Nasty Half. Stock axles in 40s and no problems. You know, he listened to his spotters well, drove well. You know,
well, going back to you saying hang a tire, eventually it's all coming back to seat time.
A lot of it's seat time, but a lot of it's suspension tuning and transitioning. You know, when you see them just snap over and land on their side, you know there's problems with it, regardless of what that link calculator tells you. You know, we don't get into giving out our numbers that much, because that is, you know, that's a starting point. That's a point of reference to go, here's kind of sort of where I want to be, and you know, power changes where I want to be. You know, so wheelbase changes where you want to be. They all vary. You can't just build off it and go, these are the perfect numbers, because they don't exist. You know, that whole world of what people think online about suspension, it's like a blackout. It's like getting inside a shock.
Yeah, no, for sure. When I got going, what you and I were talking about, I was building a vehicle for predictability, right? So when you go to make a climb, some vehicles feel like they're coming over backwards. I didn't want any part of that, right?
Yeah.
And I also, like, when you get tippy, I wanted to know, is the thing just like crazy tippy, or can I feel, okay, now I'm planted, now I can go.
Right.
Those were all super important to me as I was doing the suspension. So whether it was the geometry or the shock valving, all of that had mattered to me. So.
And we've evolved from like more of a hard parts company who was hardcore into just competitive rock crawling in like the early 2000s to a suspension tuning company where it's tuning vehicle dynamics, and that brought us into truck and everything else we're doing besides just Jeeps, Broncos. It's a whole different animal. But, and they're like a light switch. IFS, when you tune that with some stuff is interesting. I mean, you went through it with Jordan's car.
Yeah.
It's a completely different level of tuning and suspension analysis that's going on. And you can start with what you feel are the ideal numbers, and you might be moving bracket positions and moving stuff around as you're trying to tune for it. I mean, I'm sure with the race car you're in now, sitting co-dog, that car didn't come out of the box day one perfect. You put time and effort into getting that thing to be competitive and be reliable, which, to what we're all talking about is why you limit, certain coilover strokes. Because if you're running a 16 straight up and down, and we're running a 13 at a 15-degree angle, well, at the end of the day, that's really giving you just about the same amount of axle travel, your amount of anti-dive if it's in the front, and other things are changing with it that you're tuning your shock packages around for vehicle dynamics and vehicle control. So, whether we want a little bit more speed, you guys run a lot of straight up and down in the back and a little bit of angle at the front, and you've spent the countless number of hours to get your suspension there for what you want that vehicle to be.
Yeah.
And the other thing is learning from your customer base, whether that be your dealers or your consumers and their feedback, because we're just sitting here, you've been putting 12 months into your new JT kit. Well, now you're going to start getting other asses in the seat, and they're going to be giving you feedback of what they feel, and you have to take all that into account to give the best overall package you can give. It's not just
because then you can sell more.
Well, you're making more people happy too, and not just some of us might not have the same driving style as that consumer.
Right. And that's a lot of it. Like, even going back to the way the coilovers are set up in general, I've had that argument with even other builders that were like, coilover angles don't matter. And I was like, no, they matter 100% to me. I angle as much as I can. I mean, when you're crawl-wise, you're trying to let that axle come up and actually be at unison with each other. Compared to some guys that are bombing are keeping them a little more straight than guys like me. I mean, look at all the buggy setups and things are as wicked as you can get them. So to me, coilover angle always mattered, going the same with what you're looking for.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure when you were cutting holes into your JK to build your first kit, you were like, shit, I gotta get this right because I'm not putting this body back together.
Well, now I got a lot of that done by YJ, right?
Right.
That's where I decided, I want double triangulated rear suspension.
Yep.
I can feel, I was going for all those things. So by the time we got to the JK, we had a wealth of knowledge of what we were looking for,
But you're going to do longer weeks anyway.
Yeah, longer, and just having that longer wheelbase,
But
and then you put a double triangular on that, you didn't feel it like you did on a 100-inch wheelbase. The thing was like squirrely,
But at the end of the day, you also change the center of gravity for the vehicle. You change all these other things that need to be taken into account. Then you put the countless number of hours in it to tune it, and not just go, well, here's a link kit, here's some shots I'm selling from somebody else that, they got corner weights on, they're going to take their best guess.
Right.
It's a package you're throwing together.
Yeah. We get a lot of people that try and piece it together, and I tell them, like, you're Frankensteining it together, you better know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be disappointed.
And at the end of the day, like I said, the biggest thing is that customers need to know, or consumers in general, what they want out of their vehicle. And if you think you're going to be influenced by YouTube, watch some of these things. Don't just judge how quickly these vehicles are transitioning, doing what they're doing. You know, if they can't, again, we're all going to hang tire. It doesn't matter what we're doing. You know, if you're in a nasty half and a full body rig, or even some of the weird lines, optional lines on the Fawn, I mean, we all know where these are. You know, you're going to hang tire, but how predictable is it to transition over when you're up there?
Right.
Is it just going to go, just flop over, now you're on your side quick?
We've seen that.
Yeah, we've seen it a lot out here this week.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and we can watch these guys do what they're doing, and you're just like, either they have a geometry problem and they're not really saying what the real numbers are. They could be put in not correctly, especially on the builder kit side. And then, you know, or there's this mismatch between the springs and shocks and what's going on underneath to marry that product together so it is the best it can possibly be. Or maybe this guy bought this because he thought it was going to be the best for him, but at the end of the day, you know, it didn't suit his driving style and what he wanted to do in reality.
Yeah,
you know,
this reminds me of something else. So many times we get customers that call us and go, hey, I found this Jeep and it's got, you know, they just name off all the parts, the King shocks, the 3-link front, the 12 rear, and they're like, what do you think, should I buy it? And I'm like, well, first off, why is the guy selling it? Because maybe it drives terrible. Right? Like, you know, we'd have to know a lot more information about the vehicle to even begin to assess it. But, you know, there's so many things about these vehicles that it's not just putting together a parts list and saying, you know, this is what I got, this should be perfect.
Right.
That's not what it is.
You can check a lot of boxes without having them all work together.
Oh, 100%. You can check every box without having that work together.
You get the high-end parts, but if they're not working together, it's going to drive like a pile.
Right. It's the same with engine tunes, same with everything else.
Yeah.
You know, engine, transmission tunes, you know, they even affect the suspension dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how that torque converter is in low range. Is it locked all the time, so it's just a light switch on the gas pedal, or is it unlocked? You know, how that marrying that together so these people get the vehicle that they are dreaming of to drive, whether it be at the Hammers or here or anywhere else or on the street. You know, that's what they need to think about.
Yeah.
It isn't.
And you don't necessarily know that when you're first getting into it. Right?
No.
You just kind of, that's evolving as well.
Yeah, even today, we had customers coming up, you know, obviously when they're not moving the gas tank, we're very focused on independent 3-link rear wheel track bars.
Right.
Because, you know, that suits them the best for what they're trying to do. If they want to be here, they want to drive on the street, and they want, you know, listen, if you want to move that gas tank, you just open up your world to a whole pile of other things.
And your wallet.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Now, do you want to go rock climbing? Do you want something very little up travel? Do you want something more like you offer, where they want to cut up to the tub, or more like where we offer, where
trailing arms or whatever?
Right.
That's
Right. And understanding what they're getting into, I think, is the biggest thing that they need to know.
Yeah, for sure.
And not just going with, hey, my buddy on YouTube says this one's the best. Well, they're probably saying that for a reason. You know, they might have a coupon code to be getting a kickback. Who knows why they're saying it?
Well, oftentimes I find that it's the only thing the guy knows. Right?
Yeah.
Like somebody going, well, I like the BFG tires. Well, what are the tires we even run?
Right.
Like, come on, you know, you have no basis, right?
Yes.
So you really got to be careful of that source.
Yeah, exactly. Especially on tires, wheels, you know, suspension. Your entire build cannot. You really got to put time and effort, especially if you're going to this level. As soon as you start thinking about even cutting the brackets off and going even to a base long arm, you really got to think about what you're going into and not just make that commitment based off of what you saw. That level of influence is really not great. Talk to one dealer, and if that dealer is really focused on one brand, well, talk to another and get a bunch of ideas. Don't just focus on one thing and be tunnel driven down that line.
That's what I always tell customers. Call a few dealers in your area, give them a chance to earn your business.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and it's crazy. Obviously, East Coast is very different than West Coast. You know, and then, you know, making that compromise across coast is very big. You know, I would typically, if I was just dedicated West Coaster, I'd be a little bit different. You know, dealing with the Northeast, the weather, the snow, the stuff that we do. Snow runs are fun. I mean, they're not terrible. I know you guys might be against it.
No,
I'm from Missouri.
Missouri's bitter cold. I don't like the bitter cold. Get me out of the bitter cold. I need that little refresher coming off the East Coast. You know, but you guys can keep your cold oceans. I want my nice warm ones in the summer. But you know, it's just yeah. Our 85-degree lakes, your 65-degree lakes. Not getting into that stuff. But no, I mean, you know, understanding the evolution that's happened. You know, these guys are just jumping into it, and some of them just want to be accepted. You know, which again, if you want to be accepted, learn to drive your vehicle for what it is before you go out there and spend every dollar that you got, and then all of a sudden you've got something that's undrivable. Obviously, in your world, if you're a very dedicated rock crawling guy, they already have a notion of what they want to do. You know, they're coming into it saying that's a very small niche of what. Oh yeah, no, exactly.
It's tiny.
Yeah,
and
but
people have even talked to me about it, and I'm like, yeah, it's just kind of what I like and what I'm aiming for, and I'd rather do what I like, and it is a small niche, so I know I'm not gonna make the killing on it or anything like that. It's just all about.
No, but they're coming to you. They already know what they want to do. Where they might be going to you or us and looking at our shiny aluminum arms or what we're doing and see our builds and go, I want something like that. Do you need that? You know, is this what you're going to use, or is this what you want to tell your people at the local Jeep meet?
Right.
You know,
right, that you got a giant engine and giant tires.
Right. Yeah. And I can hashtag this guy, and I look cool.
Yeah. Look at my lights.
Right. You know, it's not what it's about. I mean, how many of us enjoy a nice Jeep that just rides and drives nice on the street that we might take to Moab, because Moab's not hard.
Right.
You know, you can do 90% of everything on a mid-arm kit. You don't need to go baller there. Right. You know, as long as you're a good driver. You understand what you want. Then you come here. Yeah, if you're going to get in a nasty half like we did, or some of the things you guys are into here, you know, you need a built rig. You know, you need axles. You need everything.
Yeah, because you're jamming tires into holes and forcing them to come up and undercut. You know,
the V-notch wedges are just nasty. How you make a?
Yeah.
Did you just laugh? No laughing from the peanut gallery?
No, I don't think people understand the forces, you know, when they're shoving a vehicle in those things and making them do that stuff.
When you're trying to make your rear climb on the side of the tire. And to your credit, what tires work best? You know, the best tire out there is probably not the best street tire.
Right.
You know, what do they want to get out of their vehicle? You know, if I'm going to drive at 90% of the street, you're not going to want a comp track.
MT.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and you might want to, dude, the tire industry has evolved just like our suspension industry's evolved. You know, they are very good. There's a lot of good riding tires now that hold up very well, that cross over from the street to the trail and go back to the street.
Yeah.
You know, but your elites are still your elites out here. You know, always your comp stickies. But you're not driving that down the road at 90 miles an hour.
Right.
Who?
Well, you probably You just hit up Tony's credit card. Tony, tires. This shit's worn out. Where'd you go? Well, I drove from here to Jeep Beach, across the country.
Guy that drives like to the beach with his girlfriend. We're like, on stickies, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah.
Well, now he's on the boldest stickies you've ever seen, so I think he's recording.
Honestly, they work really well out here. Ball stickies and this stuff,
out here. Not as great at hammers.
No, not at all. And again, that's knowing your terrain,
Yeah.
where you're gonna, you know, wheel your vehicle, what you want to use it for. You know, that's
most everybody's gonna say, I want something that'll do it all.
Right.
Yeah.
But what compromise are they willing to make to get there?
Right.
And are they educated enough to pick the right thing for them? That's what it comes down to. You know, they're all very, very different in what we're
and when you say educated, that's just a matter of doing a little research, asking the right questions, right, and then figuring it out.
Right.
Like, okay, I do like that direction or that direction.
And taking your time.
Yeah.
Because I get it. You get a brand new Jeep or a new GPU, you want to start knocking this stuff out.
Yep.
But patience and actually figuring it out will pay
Oh,
off in the long
100%.
run.
Or even
100%.
if your buddies on YouTube got a lot of videos up on their vehicle, sit there and watch the videos and watch the vehicle.
Yeah, not even the flexing, like just when they go to climb something, how does it, what does it do? Does it look like it's going all that?
Right. Does it
bounce?
level out?
You know,
Like, what is it doing?
Yeah.
Does it give you the leaf spring bump?
Right. Or, is it lifting tired? Does it just want to snap roll? Can it be settled easily? Is it controllable? Everybody's going to have an opinion. You guys are a great company. You're trying to do your own thing. We've been established for a long time. It's about picking the ultimate compromise whenever you're building anything. You guys have built an Armada chassis, but that is what that was.
Yeah.
So that is the ultimate in compromises. You're building from scratch. You could pick anything you want to pick and then go from there. You could do anything, but once you start making decisions, you made this decision. Now you have to make the next part work. Now you have to make the next part work.
Yeah.
And we've done, some heavy chassis work and some stuff like that too on 40. Never to that level because we don't have a customer base there. I want to focus on testing what we can test that's going to relate to our consumer, kind of like you guys running, your JKUs in 4400 class.
Yeah.
What is the best thing we can do for our customer base that helps us gain knowledge to do what we do? And we do a lot of vehicle dynamics testing now for street use because trying to be focused for that whole spectrum is a much bigger focus. He's focused solely on the rocks. So where is he every weekend? He is out testing. He didn't go, hey, I got this bracket kit and these links and you can buy this now. He's taking the time to develop it, test it, get out there, figure out what he wants to tweak, move some things around just like we all do.
Yeah.
So for the consumers, I really think it comes down to, like you said, you were talking about take your time, educate yourself to the best of your ability, and then go from there. Don't fall into a trap of social influence.
100%.
Social influence screwball's the best. But anyway, I should be getting paid by that.
And you know what? Find a guy that you respect, our gal, that wheels really well,
right?
That's been around here for a while. And I would almost guarantee they've built their Jeep at least 3 times. Listen to their mistakes.
I mean, I did that.
I've been through like 5 builds on
I was 100% guilty of that.
Yep.
And how much more.
And those are the guys that'll take their advice.
Right, and listen to the people that are going to be honest. That are going to be like, look, man, here's what I did, and I wish I would have done X, Y, or Z. And a lot of us, and people don't realize in the community that we all go out and wheel together.
Yeah.
We're always in the same areas. We're on the same trails together, and most of us get along. And
I see you more than my parents.
That's terrifying. I'm pretty much old enough to be your dad, so let's not go there. But no, I just don't know how to emphasize enough that they look at what you guys have to look into, what everybody has to offer, but look into it with detail about how it performs and what their end goal is for themselves, not just being influenced by people. And we all work with influencers, or we all have friends that are influencers, and they're part of this industry. But some of them have a very jaded opinion on what they're doing and have literally come into this industry because they want to be an influencer. And it's like,
that's what's terrifying.
That is very terrifying. One, you're not going to make any money, so I wouldn't try it. No. But 2, you're going to spend all your money on a Jeep that you're going to go out and wreck. 3, I don't have 3, but let's revert back to 1 and 2. And there's been some that have been very successful in it, who stumbled on it by accident, and there's been others that deliberately, they come into this and going, I want to be an influencer. I want to go wheeling. Yes, it's great to go wheeling, go out with you guys, go out as a community and go wheeling, but it's not necessarily a form of income.
No.
Like, what are you thinking? That's
Oh, I know. It's different if you're so passionate, you're having fun with it.
right.
It's like a side thing, and then it starts to take
Yeah.
off. That's awesome.
Right.
People can see you're passionate about it.
And that's what's going to drive people to watch them, though.
100%.
It's not just I want to be in this to be an influencer.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be the passion and what they went through to get there that people are going to gravitate towards. It's not going to be, you know, this guy's running this, and this Jeep looks awesome, and you know, people aren't going to, you know, they might watch a couple things, but they're not going to watch that. They're not going to be entertained by that forever.
No.
So that's another thing. That whole influencer side is, it's tough. You know, you and I are out there to win races. We're out there to be truly the best we can be.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to be the best rock crawler his rigs can be. We don't necessarily want to be influencers. Yes, we're kind of, and I hate to say this, people do call us influencers, which somebody called me that the other day on social media. I was really pissed. But, you know, our goals are on a completely different level than just getting YouTube visits.
Yeah.
You know, winning hammers, winning Baja, winning, you know, championships, you know, drives us to be better.
Yeah.
You know, our next build is an IFS Gladiator with rear coilers, rear trailing arms. You know, we're going after the desert because we've done well with, you know, Gerald. So we did really well with the first Gladiator we had, but now we have some new products that we want to test and develop to the best of our ability and jump into that class. You know, and I don't know where you guys are headed next now, but
I mean, we're still pretty focused on the JL, which is the evolution of our Elite into
Yep.
the EXS. So, and we may even take what we've learned doing the EXS and back down to the JK,
okay.
where you know, those are old enough now that the frames have had 3 or 4 kits on them. They've been cut up, and they're like, man, I really need a new frame.
And now finally people
And you're
way
right.
less hesitant to cut on the JK.
Yeah.
Right, and people shouldn't be welding multiple kits to the same frame in the same positions
Right.
because the base metal is shot.
Yeah.
That vehicle
Grind
is,
it
yeah.
down,
You know,
And then you patched it, but
and obviously
that's
you're more focused on the rock crawling side in the JK, JL, JT because your wife hates TJ, LJs, which we're not going to talk about because she's totally out of the whack of the world. You know, we won't go there. Wait till we get you a YJ. It's gonna be awesome.
JK people. That's actually all of us started, or ours mostly started with the JK that we cut in half. That's actually the guy that bought it off who's out here, but same thing on numbers. You know, we computed it when we first shrunk a 4-door down to 112 and then 2 chassis to the rear. We started with a calculation and we changed it 3 times. So the calculation was the start point. Yeah, took it out, beat the shit out a few times. I mean, ended up in some really, really bad spots and changed it up a bunch of times, just basing it off until the 3rd time was like, right, yeah, no, that's comfortable.
And sometimes you look at the calculations and you know, yeah, again, it's a starting point, but all of a sudden you're like, well, shit, that's sitting right where the driver's seat should be. That's not gonna work.
That's not gonna work.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I only got this kind of room to play
And you were
with.
talking about shock towers, now you're like blowing through the floor.
Oh, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's, you know, again, that compromise that you and we're all doing to make the best products that we can for them is on a different level, you know, but none of us are releasing a product after 3 months and going, hey, it's ready for production. No, man, it's a long time.
Well,
Some
and it's
aren't
important to me.
even doing 3 months.
No, I know.
Now it's like,
Yeah.
bam, I did this will work,
Yeah.
here
Right,
you go.
and you know, if you've got a builder's kit, you can kind of put that off on the consumer, the dealer, the
It's a good way
installer.
to blame it. The installer is what usually ends up taking the heat out of
Right,
that.
I've had some friends that have taken some heat for that, but you know, and that's not the guy you want to be blaming because if you're coming out with, let's say you put your EXS kit out there as a builder's kit, you know what I mean? The installer shouldn't take the blame for that shit if it goes in backwards or upside down. You know, us as companies should have not necessarily a turnkey if they're doing a builder's option, but some sort of guidance to give them when they call up for, you know, when you're answering a phone for tech, you know, we have to give them some guidance. We have to know what they could possibly experience, and honestly, that takes a lot of time.
Well, and that's one of those areas that these guys start to go, okay, you don't know what you're doing. You shouldn't have bought the builder's kit.
Yeah.
Now what you need to do is buy the rest of the stuff that goes with
Right,
it.
this is tuned. You don't have to do the
100%.
thinking. It's all laid out for you, but I mean,
Because everybody's trying to do it on the cheap, you know?
right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, or at least on some sort of relative budget.
Yeah.
They're not going into it with no budget, blind, you know, on a blindfold. And we deal with it more than probably all you guys do because we sell kits with shocks, without shocks, but we've worked directly with Fox. We've worked directly with Bilstein. You know, King being on your coast is very, very difficult, and you know how hard they are to work with, and you're not very far from it.
right.
You know, and now ADS is coming up, and obviously we do our own, so it's, you know, or Glenn at Radflow, you know, we work with multiple, so
Sources,
yeah, we have to know how their products react with our products, so the consumer is getting what they ideally want,
Yeah, wherever they land.
regardless of
Yeah.
brand that they want,
Yeah.
how it needs to function, and what, you know, hey, what clicks do I put my Fox DSCs with this kit and these coils, and I got this much crap in the back, I got a spare, and oh, I got a roof rack tent. Well, you better have a heavy sway bar too, and start making some other changes.
Yeah.
You know, because we don't necessarily account for every optional variable, but we should have an idea of the effects of those variables on what our products do.
Well, and that's a good point. So, you know, while we've been on the trail this week, I asked people, why did you buy that? Why did you buy that? It's always price. Every single time. It wasn't like this, I did the homework on this, and, you know, they're just like, I've got a good price on it, you know?
Yeah, like tonight we talked at the vendor show, we talked to an older couple. They both have Jeeps, and he wants to change up from what he has to, you know, some things. So we were going over the first variable. Do you want to move the gas tank? No, okay, cool. That puts us back in this box. Now, and we went over other options for him, and he's like, I want to do them both the same. I'm like, well, don't you really want to just try one and make sure it's set up right? Because you're already taking out one long arm kit to go to something else because you know what you don't like. Do you want to do that multiple times? Oh, by the way, our bracket's welded, so once you do this, you really shouldn't be welding. You really shouldn't be welding in the same spots again unless you're going to plate the frame and start over again. You know, so understanding what they want to get is huge.
And like I said, a lot of the time they don't even know.
You know,
Yeah.
but why would you be in such a hurry to go do 2 new ones when you already did something you didn't like?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't understand the mentality.
I think part of it is people have a hard time, and I saw this with racing. Taking on what's wrong is them. And they just want to throw other parts at it and be like, it can't be me. It must be that crappy shock or suspension or what, you know. They're
Yeah.
just like, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen this a lot. And maybe they just need a little more seat time and to be around the right people and not watching videos where people are driving like, you know, rock bouncers. There's a nice way to drive something,
Right.
you know.
And well, that brings me to another part. Like what you see on YouTube, the exciting stuff. Your Jeep can't survive doing that every weekend.
Right.
The action stuff.
Yeah,
you
whether it's
need
bikes or
something
your
right
bikes or
now
whatever.
that handles way better,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to find that because
Yep.
you may have like 2 of those crazy exciting obstacles in you a year, but stuff will stress.
100%. Frames are going to stress that.
Yeah.
I mean, especially being
Drivetrain.
yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. You know, and we see it a lot, you know, through racing, and you do too. You know, trying to make these factory chassis live through year
Beating.
like a John Schaefer's car. I honestly can't believe he still races that goddamn thing. That thing's been racing for 11 years. I think he's finally given up on it because it's so stress cracked front to back that it should. It's not even safe to get in.
Right.
You know, but yeah, exactly what you said. These things are not going to live forever.
Oh.
You know, you might have gotten lucky, or maybe that was in your wheelhouse, a skill set to make that obstacle do what it just did. But it's not a long-term situation.
No.
You know, everybody wants a double whammy rocker knocker. Yeah, we can all go do it in our sleep. You know what's really cool? To give yourself a pucker factor of the slide. You know, and you know what you're not doing with that is putting a stretch crack in your frame.
Yeah.
You know, the vehicle can handle that over and over. You can just do loops on that thing all day long. You didn't hurt anything.
And then make it up axle hill.
Right, exactly. Because there's going to be spots where you don't have a choice. You got to give it a little.
And then it's inevitable. I don't care how you build your Jeep, what kind of drive you're going to get in a bad situation. At some point, you wheel enough. You want everything to work at that time.
Right. The minute you need it.
Yes.
And
doing those hot shot obstacles every time you go wheel is not when you need it.
Right, 100%. It might be great for your YouTube clicks for a little while, but what happens to your YouTube clicks when your vehicle's broken in the corner of your garage because you don't have enough money?
That's what you don't see.
Right. Where'd they go? Well, their shit's broken. It ain't coming out of the garage for a year. You know, he needs a new transfer case, axles. He's throwing 30 grand at frame. Oh, I gotta cut the cage off. You know, and obviously now you guys are doing cage work into the JLs, which is, you know, there's a lot of risk versus reward there. It's tough.
Yeah.
You know, even jumping out of suspension, the accessories that they need to complement their build, so it's going to be able to do this over and over and over again.
Well, the moment we give somebody 3.0 shocks, you know, they want to go out and beat Robbie Gordon, right?
Right.
So they better have a cage in there.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of variables there that need to be played into to, you know, have a completely safe vehicle.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have a cage in my JK because I'm doing specific things that I want to do with it. It's not a long-term vehicle for us, but should I be on nasty half all the time? Probably not. You know, but we're making it work, you know, but I'm accepting that risk and I know that. But the average consumer, they ain't got a clue that what they should have for safety. Oh, especially if you're not in the right suspension and the thing's a light switch, you're going over. And when it goes, sometimes those things are pretty violent.
We even saw good Jeeps this week because the sand was wet, and when they would go through, the rear tires would fill up, and they would just do weird stuff.
Yeah.
You know, that otherwise should have just climbed right out of there. But, you know, it's the conditions.
But but you come to the East Coast, you see a lot of that.
Yeah.
You know, you see them grab and bounce and just kind of hop all over the place trying to get up. But you know there's going to be that one wedge that your tire is going to land in where you're going to stress the shit out of your axle, your drive shaft, your powertrain. It's going to load up and it's going someplace. You know, that stuff's not going to live forever.
And if it doesn't break then, like, you're dang well weakening.
Right. And I can talk about, in particular, a part failure we had, you know, this just today with Jake on whatever we did. But, you know, being in nasty half yesterday, he had a stretch fracture in his tie rod end. And the only reason it finally let loose today, but, you know, when you looked at it from today's break, you could see it was already stretch fractured yesterday from all those V-notches.
Yes.
You know, and yes, we're redesigning the part, but, you know, this is how you learn. You know, and the consumer shouldn't be, you know, needs to understand. Well, not just the guinea pig, but they also need to understand that these parts aren't going to live forever.
Yeah, right.
You know, you're a nasty half, just wedging your front end. Exactly.
You can break anything if you try hard.
100%. 100%. But, I mean, if there's anything else you guys think we should add to this.
I think one of the only portions, and it's more on the selling triangulated kits and shit like that, is people being conscious on who their builder is. And I say that because you guys can do the best you can do on frame brackets, anything you want to do, JK, whatever it is. But if the builder's setting the axles wrong, the builder's doing this, to me they tend to give other companies bad names because they're like, well, it's, I don't know, call it whatever, it's Genright, it's a Rock Krawler, it's Moto Builds or whatever. Well, yeah, you bought but you were supposed to do what you needed to do, set it at ride height, you know, do everything you gotta do to make that thing work, and most of them aren't doing that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these companies are used to doing bolt-ons.
Right.
To where they're like, oh yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
What kind of price we get for that? Okay. And then the guy's like, well, I'm getting a little better of a deal there, so I'm gonna go with that guy.
Yeah.
But you come at it also not only from a rock crawler, but as a shop, where if we're building vehicles, you know, we only build them for select people, for purposes, certain reasons, and you guys have your shop side where you have your trained techs to build them the way you want. You know, and that's a good point. But we also don't want to blame the builder.
No.
But there's a two-way conversation that needs to be happening when they're doing it, and that builder needs to understand, or that shop, hey, I might be out of my wheelhouse. Check their ego for a second. Call the company. And we dealt with
Yes,
this.
that's a very big portion
Right.
of it, in my
And
opinion.
any company
Just
will
talk to
walk
the
the builder
company.
through
Right.
anything.
Yeah. Well, everybody's there to help.
Yes.
Especially they're a customer, especially on something like that. That's a higher ended customer. We want that customer to be happy. I mean, we work with a lot of axle company. You guys will just kind of stick to two.
Yeah.
You know, we work with the Fusions, the East Coast Gears, and obviously the Currys, the Danas, and the Dynatracks. And we ran into an issue where we were sharing files with Fusion and one customer in particular. And they made all of his mounts 2 and 5/8 wide with a 5/8 bolt. Well, our joints that we supply are 2 and 3/8 14 mil for uppers. And he complained about having rattles. And I'm working through it with East Coast now and Dan at Fusion to correct the problem. But the builder didn't tell us and never even knew it till he actually went to replace the arms of something else the guy wanted. And the customer should have never had to deal with that.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
that's on the builder to look at what's going on, because you're not pulling in 1/4 inch brackets, you know, 1/4 of an inch
No.
with the wrong size bolts.
Right.
You know, we had the joints that could have solved, and we would have gladly changed everything for the guy. Now we had a mutually upset customer, and I didn't find out about it till I really started working with Fusion and those guys and really getting into it. And they were sharing their models with me, and I was telling them where to position them because they tried to do it on their own.
Yeah, and that's
And didn't have the jigs and the fixtures and weren't correcting for pinion angle rotation with lift height, and they were basing it off of flat geometry. I'm like, whoa, no, none of this is right.
Right.
We have to correct for all of these things if you're going to put these brackets on to make this customer happy, because especially with us, we try to make it pretty self-explanatory. We give jigs off of factory brackets, but our control arm mount and our shock mount are one bracket. So if you're high on the shock or control arm mount, that shock mount's way low. That's way out of travel, way out of spring rate.
Right.
You know, everything is set off by one simple error that, you know, we're trained enough to see when we get there, you know, get the right pictures and the right information, but we'll never guess if he's having a problem with putting a square peg in a round hole.
Right.
We can't guess that. You know, nobody can guess that information without getting the right information from either the shop or the end consumer to get the problem corrected.
And it goes back to the consumer, and it goes back to the shop owner. There's no bad question.
Right. Don't be afraid to ask.
It's the same with every industry, every hobby you're in. You
Yep.
always have to be willing to learn.
Yeah.
And today I had a guy with our suspension, 2.5 IBPs, right, the whole thing. The secondary nuts, a crossover rolled all the way to the top, and I'm like, no wonder why it feels terrible, dude. Like, you're not even utilizing your dual spring right here,
Right.
you know?
So you're educating the consumer instead of the shop.
That's
so,
right.
And that's a big thing, is making them understand what those little pieces, because you don't let people revalve shocks. We don't generally let people revalve shocks. They need to understand how their vehicle is, their driving style, to set those things properly.
Yeah.
Because that affects, G out, roll in, tip out.
Yeah.
It affects everything.
Yeah.
And transitions, it's not just link geometry, it's putting that package together that says, this works for you. Even your setup might be slightly different from mine and my driving style, but these are the way these things work, and you can pick it.
Yeah.
Or if you want to work with your shop to go out and tune and do stuff, if they're into that level of tuning, they can help you do it.
Yeah.
But understand, the consumer, to your credit, needs to understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they don't have the skill set, that's fine. Go find somebody with that skill set to help you, because nobody is the ass in the seat but the driver.
100%. And when you ask that somebody, you're going to learn.
Right, 100%.
Yeah, like this guy today, he got an education on why all this stuff matters, and then we check the nitrogen in everything to make sure and I noticed the bump stops were totally clean. So I'm like, hey, let's go up 50 pounds on these. Make sure you're not slamming this thing.
Yep.
It's all those, but you know, it was a new build, right? So the guy was out wheeling it, and now I said, okay, tomorrow when you go back out, try this and let me know how it feels. Because I want him to come back. We've done this so many times where they go, oh my God, I had no idea.
Or you see him sitting on the crossover rings at ride height, and they're like,
Right.
this thing rides like a tank.
Yeah,
Oh, no shit. You know, you're not using the coilovers right. You're not, you know, and listen, your build might have differed enough where they might take like your tracer kit on an LJ, and all of a sudden this thing's an overlanding LJ.
Right.
You know, and they need to jump spring rate.
There's a lot of times they come back and they tell me that, and then we go look at their Jeep, and they tell me again, I'm like, sounds about right.
Yeah, but we have to help them pick the right spring rates and the next step for them to get it to perform and ride correctly. You know, it's not just this is a kit, you know, this is a universal thing. When you're talking about builds of those natures, like your rock crawling, let's say you took the bed off of your Gladiator, it's going to behave completely different.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, everything, vehicle dynamics, and they all depend on sprung weight, unsprung weight, tire, powertrain. It's all the same.
Yeah.
You know, and understanding how to correct for it, like you just walked your customer through.
Yeah.
You know, we had one yesterday. He was sitting on a transition ring. He's like, I need more rebound on my rear shocks. I'm like, how about you let the two coils in the back work a little bit better first? Because they didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, there's a level there that, and it seems to be happening more and more with the YouTube, you know, the Facebook era, that they want this, but they don't understand how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So as they're jumping into it, they're just diving in with 2 feet, not even asking a question, and just running with it, and the whole vehicle is set up wrong, which affects vehicle dynamics.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you guys got anything in closing you want to say? We've all been around a long time. Not you, Jeff. You're a little puppy. But, you know, you, myself, we've been around this industry for 25, 30 years.
I think what I would say is when I started racing King of the Hammers, that exposed me to what was possible.
Yeah.
Like I never knew you could even go that fast. And you know, once you're working closely with the guys tuning your shocks and doing these different things, you can see how all these small changes affect what it's doing. And then that's what I wanted to bring over to Jeeps. Because I'm like, wow, this is a whole new world of.
And in all honesty, we went in the same fashion. We went from heavy rock crawlers with a lot of anti-squat, a lot of crazy climbing, a lot of weird things, to more Ultra 4, more desert vehicle dynamics, and then obviously with our relationships with the OEs, getting more on the side of, you know, street mannerisms and things of that nature that have to set a vehicle to be a complete chassis build across all platforms, you know. And you have obviously been, you know, mostly 4400 guys, 45s. You know, we've been more primarily focused on what we can do with a stock class vehicle, 46s and 45s, and I built 148. I literally built that around the shocks. Talk about some compromises. Remember I did that coilover bypass all in one shot? Because Wayne was like, I've never seen anybody do this. And I was like sitting there thinking, I can do this. So I made an entire car around one concept. Terrible waste of time. Terrible waste of time. But
how do you know until you try?
Right, exactly.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Cutting brackets off.
Yeah.
You just kind of try.
If the consumers knew how much stuff we've actually tried that didn't work.
Well, and I think that's the testament right there, right? If they're hearing a message, it's like we've been around a long time. We've tried a lot of things. We're still here. We're using the products we sell. That's a whole other level of trust, right?
Yeah.
And more importantly, we're still trying.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we always want that little improvement,
Yeah.
right? A little better.
For the customer and for us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, to give medical credit, you know, they came out with their Duraflex joint. The consumers loved it. So we had focused on becoming more consumer friendly back then. It took me 5 years to get a joint anywhere remotely similar that I would like before it ever saw the light of day. You know, I was just like, no, that's no offense. It's, you don't use rubber as a bearing surface. That's like a step one no-no.
Right.
You know, and I was like, if I was going to do this and the consumers like this, here's how I would do it. Then you have to find the manufacturers to make the parts, because the way we did it is super high tolerance. You know, to press bearings in a sleeve and capture the sleeve and get the rotation right. It's, you know, I'm talking like 7/10, not 0.007 of an inch is my bore tolerance. And then we check every one of them with a go no-go gauge. You know, so to tool up and bring it to production took us like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't an overnight thing.
And close tolerance costs money.
Oh,
You know.
yeah.
Like.
And finding manufacturers that can hit those numbers
Right.
is a whole different animal with a compression
That's so
overload.
cool.
Yeah, everything went from this to like 2.
Yeah.
Quick. You know, you're like, okay, well, hi Tenneco, how you doing? Shit, you can bend me over a barrel with this one. You know, and now you're out there focused on the crawling aspect and stuff like that, which is, you know, that's a whole different animal, focusing on just those aspects of what you're trying to do. You know, especially if you're really trying to stretch the bounds of putting 16s in, but make the rest of the vehicle live. That's tough. You got driveline angles you got to focus on. That's,
fronts especially. That was always the issue.
you know, just making the vehicle live through it, you know, is a big issue for consumers. So, you know, they have to know themselves first. They have to know what they want, and then step forward from there.
Yep.
You know, and not, I hate to say it, you know, and we, like I said, we all have a lot of social influencers that we work with. I try to work with more racer people, same as you know, guys that are really into it, that can push our boundaries, not necessarily give us a big influence in the social world.
Correct. Right. To
You know,
build a better product.
exactly. Not push sales, not do this. We want to be better, same as you guys. You know, and as you're building what you're building, you're going to find those guys that you work with, you can trust, to help you build more dedicated rock crawling rigs, and not be that guy that comes in and says, yeah, I'm cool with that, but go out and do this. No, you're going to find those guys that are yes, and I'm going to push your boundaries even to different limits.
Sure.
And you're going to work with them because of what they can do for you, not because they're yes, I'm going to get you sales on YouTube.
Right.
Because if you want to be better, those are the people you need to work with, and not just social media people.
Correct.
So,
Because where are they going to be when things go sideways?
Yeah.
right,
Exactly.
they're not going to be there to help you fix your vehicle. No. All right, guys. Well, it's a great conversation about
for sure, man.
where we've been, how we're getting there, and where we're going forward.
Yeah.
All right. Always good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too.
Mr. Perkins, what size diaper do you take?